vulnerable world. For civil society organizations like Terre des Hommes and for child and young climate activists, the General Comment 26 will also be a very useful advocacy tool to advance children's rights. So indeed, as the General Comment is directly linked and part of the UN Convention on the Right of the Child, which is a binding treaty for states and the most ratified, it will certainly help to strengthen our advocacy and increase its impact. And as this has been said, it's so important to ensure that this translates into action. I think the question was also how we contributed to the comment and the development of the comment. So for Terre des Hommes, the launch of the General Comment 26 is a real milestone because since the day of general discussion on children's rights and the environment in 2016, we have been pushing for the UN to take more leadership in supporting governments to develop child rights laws, policies and practices, taking more into account environmental issues, and for environmental related laws, policies and practices to be child sensitive. And with the adoption of the General Comment 26, the Committee on the Right of the Child is solidly taking this leadership. So this General Comment shows to climate activists across the world as well that their demands and concerns are being listened to. We were honored to play a key role in the development of the General Comment. Our member, Terre des Hommes Germany, was selected as official civil society partner to support the committee, experts and by organizing a child advisory team. And some members are here with us today. Terre des Hommes worked with this team to develop tools to consult with children across the world, and almost 17,000 children from 121 the text of the General Comment situates children's voices front and center. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate all the children who took part in this initiative and developed the General Comment, which is so comprehensive and spot on. This is a fantastic achievement that you can certainly be proud of. And of course, we remain committed to support you, to promote it, and to ensure its implementation. Thank you.
Wow, Valerie, thank you so much, especially for highlighting how we have the governments who have been highlighted that they have been given the authoritative rights of children so that we can actually hold someone accountable and ensure that our voice actually reaches to the higher levels. With the first question done, I would like to move on to our next question for the day, where I would like to ask the panelists how they have been involved in climate change activism in their countries and influence decision makers, starting off with Karen.
Terre des Hommes worked with this team to develop.
Hello, I'm not sure if you can see me. The camera is really bad. My name is Karen. I'm 13 years old. I am a trained child journalist and environmentalist, and the youngest member of the National Council of the Justice of Children in Kenya. I would like to talk about me and our group of children. We came together last week on Saturday and Sunday to create a document called we wrote a declaration on how us children can be able to to show how we have 13 years old, and we handed it over to the presidents of multiple countries, like the president of Kenya, the president of Chad, the president of Sierra Leone, and multiple other presidents I can remember. And I would like to. I'm actually quite happy that us children have gotten the chance to express our feelings and show that we have the initiatives and that we can help solve climate change and that we can do whatever everyone else can do.
Wow, Karan, thank you so much for your hard work and presence today. Fa, how have you participated in the climate change activism in Thailand?
Hello.
actually
พูด
quite happy
ถึงอันนั้น
that
เลยใช่ไหมคะ
have gotten the chance to express our feelings and show that we have the
ได้ยินไหมคะ
initiatives
พี่นิกกี้
and that we can help solve climate change and that we can do what
ได้ยินไหม
maybe
คะ
everyone else can.
Yes, yes.
โอเค
We can hear you in the English channel.
ค่ะจะมา
And thank you so much
เอ่อ
for your
สวัส
hard
ดี
work
ทุก
as
คน
a
นะคะ
student.
ชื่อฟ้านะคะ
So,
เป็น
how have you
แก
participated
น
in the
นำเยาวชน
biodiversity
ในเรื่อง
activism
ของ
in Thailand?
ของเยาวชนนักสิทธิเด็กล้านนาค่ะ CRVA ค่ะ แล้วก็เป็นแกนนำเยาวชนโดยที่สมานิมิตค่ะหนูนะคะก็เป็นนักเคลื่อนไหวด้านสิทธิเด็กแล้วก็สิ่งแวดล้อมค่ะ ก็เห็นว่า GC 26เนี้ยที่ออกมาเนี่ยมันเป็นมากๆที่พวกเราเนี่ยได้เห็นนะคะ เพราะว่าได้ทำให้สะท้อนเห็นถึงความคิดของเด็กแล้วก็เยาวชนค่ะ ที่พวกเราเนี่ยได้เป็นส่วนหนึ่งในการร่างนโยบายนี้ขึ้นมาค่ะเพื่อที่แล้วก็เห็นเป็นรูปเป็นร่างได้ยินไหมคะพวกเราค่ะตื่นเต้นมากๆค่ะ ที่ได้เห็น GC 26นี้ออกมานะคะด้วยความที่หนูเองเนี่ยเป็นตัวแทนเยาวชนเครือข่ายนะคะ พวกเราก็เคยรวบรวมความคิดเห็นที่จะพวกเราเคยแสดงความคิดเห็นในกระบวนการข้อเสนอแนะพัฒนาความเห็นทั่วไปค่ะโดยเราจะพูดถึงเรื่องของน้ำนะคะ ในช่วงเดือนมกราในต้นปีที่ผ่านมานั่นเองค่ะแล้วเราก็ได้ไปฟังความคิดเห็นของเพื่อนๆคนอื่นๆนะคะ ไม่ว่าจะทั้งในประเทศไทยแล้วก็ต่างประเทศนะคะ ที่องค์การสหประชาชาติ UN นั่นเองค่ะ ก็พวกเราก็ได้เห็นว่ามันเป็นรูปเป็นร่างขึ้นมาแล้วค่ะ แล้วในวันนี้ตอนไม่กี่ชั่วโมงที่ผ่าน
Water
มา
problem in Thailand. In a couple hours ago, I just attended an online meeting organized by the Department of Children, Youth and Family Affairs, the Ministry of Social Development. As a youth representative, I share a speech and make their opinion on behalf of the youth group and the campaigns which affect the children in northern Thailand. That means our voice was spoken and it was heard by the government agency. Yeah, so that's it.
Wow, Fa, that's some really inspiring work and sounds super elaborate. Thank you so much. We're so grateful to have you here with us. Coming back to you, Francesco, I would like to ask how you have contributed to the General Comment 26, whose launch we're celebrating today.
Process of information for other children to be able to participate. I am already a climate activist. I am the founder of an organization in Colombia, life founder, Guardianes de la Vida, where we have already participatory approaches and processes with children from all over the country, but also other countries from Latin America. And we've managed to reach to many children for them to be able to participate actively in all the consultations that were done for to draft the general comment through the organization I've been founding, but also through other children from different countries in Latin America. So I've been very much involved in advocacy within schools and other students for them to participate, and also through social media, giving and disseminating all the information around the General Comment 26 and the consultative process for everyone to be able, for the maximum children possible to participate. Also with other organizations in Spain, defending child rights in Madrid and Mexico. We've been networking with all these other youth activist organizations, and we've been networking for all of them to participate in the drafting of this comment. And finally, we've been mobilizing. I am already through general public into in disseminating the recommendations and for them to be taken into account, taken seriously, and for them to happen and not to be forgotten. A few weeks ago, I was in Brasilia talking to with environmental the country, but also other countries from Latin America, to do some advocacy into the public in public policy in the Amazonia from Brazil, and trying to do advocacy with this organization of youth activists there. Also in Colombia, we've been mobilizing some public institutions in different regions of the country, in the Putumayo, in the old area, to protect and to take action and to do concrete actions and things to be able to defend the healthy environment. And thank you very much for asking and for giving me the words.
Thank you, Francisco.
Gracias, Francisco.
Please tell us a bit more about your work as a climate activist, including any challenges that you may have faced along the way.
Thank you, Priyashi, for posing the question and for the excellent introduction. I'm Dhruv from Uttarakhand, a climate vulnerable state in India, where extreme floods wipe off entire villages from existence, landslides cause extended school closures, and severe forest fires destroy a natural heritage. And so, without formal climate and human rights education, I know from a young age that the climate crisis is definitely a child rights crisis, and that I have a role to play in raising awareness about this issue. I started my climate advocacy at age 11 by writing stories, poems, blogs. Just like Francisco said, I was inspired for saving the our rivers, which we consider holy, our hills, our forests, and just a right to a healthy environment. Apart from this, I regularly organize workshops to raise awareness and support child rights, just like this one. I also mentor young environmental activists in Nepal, Nigeria, and the US by helping them create engaging campaigns and build a strong online presence to mobilize their communities. Coming to the challenges, my most significant challenge as a child was the lack of child-friendly information about the climate crisis. Growing up in a small city, I also missed out on many opportunities and believe that there are countless young Gretas and Franciscos at the very forefront of the crisis, but that just need a little support to ignite their own global climate movements and lead charge for a shared future. That is why, as a COVID-19 child advisor, I co-created the COVID-19 Living Climate Resource List. A climate resource list includes 70 plus child-friendly resources, from climate magazines to climate games and even models that educate children about the climate crisis, UNCRC, youth-led organizations, and international advocacy opportunities. We keep on updating the Living Climate Resource List, hence the name Living. And just soon, later this month, we'll add a new section dedicated just to General Comment 26, including a recording of our event today and a child-friendly version of General Comment 26 when it comes out. So stay tuned for that. And with this, I'll pass the ball back to Priyashi. Thank you so much again for this question.
Thank you, Dhruv. Your work is so inspiring, considering you started off at such a young age with such a creative method of activism. Thank you, Dhruv. Now I would like to ask Katerina about her work as a climate change activist. Thank you so much for waiting while our other panelists finish, and thank you so much for your patience. Over to you, Katerina.
Thank you all so much for the opportunity for being here and for the question. To start with for my climate activism in my country, first of all, start with myself. I always think of my habits and how in my daily life and in my daily home, through basic actions, I can constantly help my goal of solving the climate crisis. But my first actual fight that I got involved was the fight to protect a natural forest here in my city, Salvador, located in Bahia, Brazil. And we do this action by promoting people to meet the forest, but we also do a lot of advocacy by pressuring the local government to pass policies to protect this area. And this was actually my first activism fight, which I can say I'm involved since I'm very, very young, because my family were the founders of protecting this forest. And therefore, when my mom was pregnant, technically, I was already there with her. In addition to that, I also have a project called Eco Clube Sustentare, which promotes sustainable and environmental education, where we're going to have an online platform launched by the end of this year with materials focused for children and kids about the environment and about the climate crisis, in addition to have practical actions for the starts focusing on our communities to help our community grow and be empowered, while also promoting this environmental and sustainable education. When it comes to international organizations, that I bring the international mindedness also to my community, I have to always talk about Air, Shore, Oceans, which is an organization founded by youth, for youth, preparing the next generations to face the multi-generation crisis, the water crisis, the food crisis, the climate crisis, also creating the next young leaders of this planet. And as already stated, I'm also a 2023 Child Rights Connect Child Advisor, which through Child Rights Connect, I also have the opportunity to connect with incredible youth from all over the world and have incredible opportunities. But going a bit more in the sense of advocacy, I want to speak of an opportunity that I had to be a High Seas Youth Ambassador. For those who don't know, recently we had the High Seas Treaty negotiations over, finally being signed by nations. And as a High Seas Youth Ambassador, we were part of the process to bring the youth perspectives to the table and to the negotiations. And the main way we did that was making letters and contacting directly government representatives and government officials to bring forward our demands. Finally, I would like to say that in 2019, I believe this was one of the greatest advocacy movements I was part of. Together with 15 other youths, I filed a petition called Children versus Climate Crisis on the Committee of the Rights of the Child, denouncing 5 countries for violating children's rights due to climate inaction. And sadly, the petition, almost 2 years later, was not able to be taken forward due to technical reasons, as the committee explained. But even though that was very sad, it was used as fuel by us who were part of the petition to continue acting to promote action towards the climate crisis. And also, even though our petition was not taken forward, it did help children's rights to be recognized as being violated by the climate and environmental crisis. And to finally finalize everything that I'm saying, I would like to finalize with a call to action. But first of all, I'd like to point out that we children, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be focused on playing. We should be focused on growing. We should be focused on studying and on being children. But sadly, due to the inaction and due to the lack of action of the older generations, we are having the need to step forward because of our future and actually our present, because the climate crisis is a crisis of the present. And therefore, I would like to call to action all youth and children to be part of local groups, to start a group in your community, to start to advocate to the protection of your rights and to the protection of the environment, because with that, you also get the protection of your rights, and also think of your own actions and of your own habits, which are also ways to make change in your daily lives. Thank you very much.
Katerina, thank you so much. I absolutely love your energy and your passion towards the youth and how we as children are actually supposed to be living our childhood, but today we're forced into, not forced into, even though it's by choice, but now we're obligated to be advocates for climate change simply because the adults won't act sometimes. And I also love your project, which is so on point for our theme here today, to spread awareness about climate change and our rights in this context. Thank you so much to all the panelists for a riveting round one of questions. I would now like to pass the floor to Januka to take over the second round. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priyansi. Thank you for initiating this insightful discussion. I'm very impressed with the insights and the thoughts of our brilliant intergenerational panelists. So before we start the next round of questions, I would like to remind our audiences that you can also participate by asking questions to our panelists using the Q&A function. So please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A section. I also request our panelists to be very brief with their answers because we don't want to run out of our time. So thank you so much for understanding. Now let's continue our discussion. So as Valerie mentioned earlier, about over 16,000 children were involved in drafting the General Comment 26, and this is one of the greatest milestone movement for child rights movement, and it is the effort of children and young people, actually the child environmental activism that led to the launch of CC26. So I would like to hear from our panelists their reaction to this milestone movement. So first, starting with Dr. Nazat. What are your reactions to this, Nazat? How do you feel about the movement?
Thank you, Januka. You know, it's very difficult to speak after all these wonderful experts, leaders, passionate, and very frankly, I have no more to add because, you know, I think I will have to retire and to stop fighting because you are doing it so well. So really congratulations, to be very frank with you. And as I highlighted in my opening remarks, you were, all of you, behind the momentum regarding, you know, this comment. And I think that it's not the end, as you highlighted, Januka, in the beginning. And I think it's also how we can move forward, making sure that it's embedded in all, you know, the work, in all the fight for children's rights. It's not a right to be seen isolated, but it's linked with all these rights, all the other rights. I think it's important. The second point, what I heard is also making, you know, accountable and also policymaker, business sectors, and really to make sure that they are taking it into account. So what is important for us today and with you is really to monitor all this implementation to make sure that it's duly implemented. And my last point, to be very short, I think you are doing wonderfully well. But I think also it's important to ask ourselves, I will channel your voices as usual. I will give you the floor. I will give you the visibility, but not only about your concern, about your initiative also, because you are doing well. But I have a request also, and let me know also how my mandate could help to make sure that all children worldwide are reached. And mainly those who are not visible and those who are forgotten, because we need to keep this movement very strong and to widespread it. This is very important. So to my final words, because I have to leave to another meeting to try to convince, you know, policymakers to make sure that children's rights are seen as an investment. So just to make sure that they are seeing them as a present and the future, but before investing in at this moment. So I just want to tell you that I am inspired by your work. You know, I want to tell you one thing. When I am tired speaking with all, trying to convince, and I am in a meeting like that with you, and I will have another meeting here in my office with 8 strong activist children. So I feel myself energized. So many thanks for giving me this energy. Many thanks for giving me, you know, having more and more, you know, strength really to fight for children's rights, because it's not an easy task, but together we can make it. So many thanks to all of you.
Thank you so much, Nazat, for your commitment, being in the highest post, like being the special representative of violence, Secretary General on Violence Against Children. You are so committed and so friendly, and you are giving credit to all the children and young people for being the energy whenever you feel tired or whenever you work. So thank you so much, and we wish you best of luck for your meeting with the policymakers we hope that it will go good. So thank you for being with us in the event. Thank you so much for your insights. So moving on to our next panelist, Fa. What do you think about it, Fa? What are your reactions? How do you feel about the moment?
หลังจากที่ GC26 เปิดตัวออกมานะคะ
After GC26 launch, different countries are interested in this topic. As a representative of Thai youth, I'm so excited to be part of this activity. I mean, the representative here in Thailand would like to have a creative and safe space for children and youth to express the opinion on GC26. Also would like government to study and understand the GC26 very well to support children in the precise way. I would like to say that all children have equal rights in regard to clean, safety, and sustainable environment. And share the resource equally. As a child activist, I also would like to take action in the position as a change maker in to the youth and the children to have the awareness about the clean, safety, and sustainable environment as before, not for a short term, but in the long term. And number two, she wants to launch a campaign about GC26, information about GC26 to children in every community and every level, including the agency who are responsible for making the GC26 into action. Yes. The last one, would like to do the GC26 information through the online, the social media, and the on-site, to do the face-to-face meeting in regard to the GC26 information given. On behalf of the representative from Thailand, I commit that I am willing to cooperate with the relevant agencies in terms of the resources mobilization for the child rights and the environment at the local, national, and international level, especially the government sector, because children and youth are the generation of the future. Yes.
Thank you so much, Fa, for your commitment. The best part I like in your reaction is your commitment to work locally, nationally, and especially with government, and your commitment to start a campaign and disseminate GC26. So I really like that. That's the best part you reacted on. So thank you so much for your commitment, and best wishes, of course, to you as well. We will be so moving on to our next panelist, Katerina. So how do you feel about this achievement, and what are your reactions to this strong advocacy tool?
Well, I think my reactions from seeing the General Comment 26 be launched are kind of mixed. I have mixed feelings for it. I'm very optimistic that included children's perspective in this whole process to big crisis in how governments, businesses, and the society can take action. Yet I also am wondering, how are we going to make sure the next steps, the implementation isn't? Because it's one thing for governments and for businesses to say, I will do it and I will commit it. And it's a totally different thing for them effectively to take action. I believe all of us who are involved in the climate crisis, we know how many false promises we have seen people and governments and nations make. And that's very frustrating. And a specific opinion of myself, I'd much rather hear people say the truth. So if there is someone contributing to the violation of my rights, then please show you're doing that. Don't hide behind a false promise. That's something that I also felt while seeing the general comment being launched. Yet, even with this realistic idea that I brought, I know that we have a global community. I see a global youth community here that is working together to ensure General Comment 26 is getting into the hands of the government officials, into the hands of businesses, into the hands of society, to make sure its implementation is effective and it reaches places that usually it wouldn't reach, and especially reaching society, because if society knows what are their rights, then they will be able to fight for these rights. And with that said, I am very optimistic, but also am sure that I'm going to work hard to make sure that my rights, together with the General Comment 26, are ensured. Thank you.
Thank you, Katerina. So powerful. Like, I'll use your one sentence. I really like it. Don't hide behind the false permissions. So I really so much for sharing your insights. So now I would like to move on to Dhruv for the next question. And Dhruv, my question to you would be,
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the question. Individually, I raised awareness about General Comment 26 by integrating information for the GC26 questionnaire and creative resources that are available on the General Comment 26 site, in the various blogs and online workshops that I organized for children and adults. I received, and very excitingly, I received a lot of valuable feedback from children on these advocacy projects. For instance, in line with what Dr. Najat was saying, Kazakhstan, which is a country that's not as discussed on international scales, and where children say that they're not as well supported by the government to express their views. Many children there said that that air pollution is a significant concern in their lives, but they never thought of it as a child rights issue, or they never thought of demanding answers from their government for not upholding their right to a healthy environment prior to reading about the General Comment 26 and reading the questionnaire. And obviously, with the COVID-19 advisory group, we contributed to a submission, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, where we child advisors discussed crucial obstacles to child leadership in climate advocacy, such as climate anxiety that stems from misleading climate information and children's exclusion, just as Katerina was saying, from policy making, which is often adult dominated, and obviously because of that, it's often adult centric as well, without any regards to the rights of the child. But we didn't, and one of the important points that came out of it is that vulnerable and marginalized children, as Dr. Najat said, are often the worst hit by the crisis. But we didn't stop at just brainstorming the problems, which are very apparent, but we also brainstormed some solutions, which included, in a very brief summary, a comprehensive climate education for every child in a way that the child understands, direct child involvement in policy making, and ensuring that the rules and the promises, as Katerina said, we don't just hide behind it, but actually enforce it as well in the real life. And shifting the climate narrative from an alarmist and pessimistic messaging to recognizing that, yes, the climate crisis is a global issue, but at the same time highlighting the stories of hope and resilience all around the world. This was an exciting opportunity for all of us, and I observed that despite our regional differences, we all shared a passionate commitment to recognizing intersectional and intergenerational climate action as a common good or as Dr. Najat said, a future investment for both current and future generations. So that is how I engaged with general government policy, but I'm really excited to know how the other panelists did as well. And I'll pass the ball back.
Thank you so much, Dhruv. That's amazing. And it's very wonderful to hear about your contributions to this important topic. It's really very important, as you highlighted about marginalized group of children, and also you highlighted the submission of COVID-19 to General Comment 26. So thank you so much for all those insights. And for our audiences, if you want to read our submission to General Comment 26, that we contributed as a group from COVID-19, you can read from the link that is in the chat box. So thank you, Dhruv. Thank you for that. So now I would like to move to Karin. Karin, how do you feel we can spread awareness about GC26 and implement it for the sake of the
Actually, we as Mtoto News, we have actually created a game to help spread awareness in semi-arid and arid areas in Kenya. We're working on it, and it's currently a prototype, but it's an Uno-like game where you have one natural disaster and a calamity and a solution to that calamity. And let's say you have drought and your friend has rain. So your friend will give you the rain and so that you can solve your drought. And the game is counted using environmental points. So the more environmental points that you have, the closer you are to winning. And when you reach 50 environmental points, you win the game. We have another game that's online. It's called Total Gone Green. For the more privileged people like us, we have like laptops and we can download. So it's technically like a crossing sort of game if you've ever played it. You have a world and you're supposed to help rejuvenate that world by planting trees. If you want to plant a tree, if you buy a tree, a real tree is planted in tree life. You can also pick up litter. You can help clean. You can most things that are usually done to help reduce the effect of climate change. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's exciting that you mentioned about the game for the sustainable world, for climate change issues, and also, yeah, that's interesting and something new. I have never heard of all those things. So I would really love to check those out. And maybe if anyone wants to check, if you have any link, you can share in the chat box. Karen, thank you so much. Hear your perspective as well on the same question. What are your thoughts on this? How can we spread awareness on this piece, and then how can we implement it for our environment?
Okay, hi. I think that a great way to share this work that we're doing right now is to translate it to many languages of the world, because many children deserve to read and to have this material with them, maybe in a physical form too. That's what we have discussed in many meetings, in many events, that sometimes children in marginalized countries or countries with difficult situations do not have enough access to internet, and it's really easier to them to access this information if we give it to them in a physical form. And yeah, it would be more accessible if we could translate it to many languages, because the problem that I think that I have found in many of these documents, in many of these topics, is that many materials are just covered in English. And for example, I work in Venezuela and our official language is Spanish, even though in most organizations, most of us speak English. In the case of my organization, I'm one of the few people working there that speaks English. And sometimes I have to translate myself the materials to show them to the kids, to show them to the other people that work at the organization. So it's important to make this information more accessible for all of us, and I think this will be a great way to do so. I know that it's sometimes hard because there are like tons of countries in the world, tons of languages and dialects, and sometimes it's not easy. I know that it's a tough work, and it requires a lot of investment, a lot of money, a lot of time and energy also. But it would be something that would help many millions of children in the world, and that would help them a lot. Even if you look at what we're doing now, we are giving the opportunity to people all around the world, no matter the language that they speak. We are providing accessibility to them. In my case, I don't need the translation because I had the opportunity to learn English growing up. But if it wouldn't be the case, and if I wanted to talk in Spanish, I would be provided with the requirements to share this message to you. And that's what matters, giving these opportunities to people, no matter what their language, what their origin or their characteristics are. So yeah, I think that this is really key to make all this more accessible for all children, especially in countries like mine, third world country, because sometimes what I have seen also is that children do not have the access to this information in the form of the internet, for example, because we have really poor access to internet services and also sometimes to technological services. So yeah, I think that providing in many languages and in physical form would be a great way to make sure that this information gets to all the small corners.
Thank you so much, Anna, for your insightful and thoughtful response. You talked with your experiences in your office and in your personal life. So that would be one of the best advice because it's linked with your experience. So thank you so much for sharing those things with all the examples so that the audience could understand it in a better way. So Valerie, I would like to pass the question to you. What do you think can be done and how can we spread the awareness? The same question. What do you think could be the effective measures to implement it for the sake of our environment, for the sake of sustainable future? Over to you.
Thank you. Very interesting to hear everybody's perspective and different ideas on how we can take it from there. Of course, as Katarina was saying, it's very important that it doesn't remain just something on paper, but that we see this becoming reality, the general comment. So we all have a role to play in sharing information about the GC26 and in supporting children and young people to use it as a tool to achieve tangible change in their communities and to hold their governments accountable as well. So from the point of view of the International Federation of Terre des Hommes, the federation includes 9 member organizations working in 67 countries across the world. And every year, our programs reach over 22 million children and their families. And so our federation has now created the specific task force to advance, and this task force has developed a multi-annual advocacy strategy, including activities to support children promoting the GC26 and ensuring it quickly translate into concrete actions. So this will be implemented and it will be over several years. But in this regard, I think it's also important to mention that while we support children to claim their rights, we also must be very attentive to the principle of do no harm. When it comes to climate activism, we know that children can be exposed to different types of risks, such as facing persecution for their activism or experiencing psychological distress caused by eco-anxiety. So when spreading awareness about the GC26, we must also be cautious to ensure that children are safe. And for example, last year, Terre des Hommes published a guide for practitioners on engaging with children about the climate crisis and violence against children. This guide was developed to support frontline workers around the world to have conversations with children, including with those who are particularly exposed to climate crisis, like working children, children on the move. So in a way that mitigates eco-anxiety and supports their mental well-being. So this is, I think, also an important point to bear in mind. Thank you.
This is so powerful, Valerie. Thank you for pointing out those things. Now, you mentioned about children's mental well-being. That's one of the very important things in today's world, because we often talk about their physical health, but mental health is so underrated, like in most of the cases. So you talked about that, highlighted that. I really like that. And about the TDS guide and everything. And when adults like you, who are working in the field of child rights and all these things since long ago, so when adults like you talk about all these things, when you are all committed towards children's right, children's environmental right, it's really very important thing for us as a young person. It's very important for me as well, because when adults understand the situation, it's more better and easier to work with, you know. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much. So now we will be moving to the question answer round. So if you have not added any of your questions in the question answer feature, question answer function, then please go and use that function and ask your questions. If you have already, now we will go to that round. And for leading us through the Q&A round, I invite Kristen, co-moderator Kristen, to lead us through that round. Over to you, Kristen. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Anuka, for moderating that interesting, fascinating second round of questions. And we are running slightly behind time. However, I think it's really important for us to give time to a last round of questions to the speakers, because there's such richness in everything, in all of the different perspectives from all around the world that you've all shared with us. Some interesting ideas, some new ideas, you know, using games to spread awareness, you know, making sure that we are, you know, always remembering translation. How do we translate? So much advice, such useful, you know, really action-oriented ideas here. So we just maybe very quickly will give, you know, maybe the last round. We do have some questions in the Q&A. So there is actually a question from someone, Gabriela, who's asking Valérie in French, how can we get the guides that you discussed? To that person, we put it in the chat, so it's available there. But there's another question in the chat, access the game. Yasub, about how can you share examples of how general comment number 26 has been applied in practice in different countries. Now, obviously, general comment 26 is very new, and so it's not started to be applied yet. However, I would like to turn that into a question for final remarks for each panelist, to ask them very quickly, what is next? What are you going to do now in order to make sure that General Comment 26 is applied in your country? So I would like to first, can we ask for very brief comments, maybe 30, 40 seconds each. What are you going to do now when you end this call in order to make sure that General Comment 26 is applied? I would like to start with Francisco. Francisco, one thing that you will do now to make sure that General Comment 26 is applied?
Bueno, una sola cosa es difícil, pero de todas maneras,
Only
pues,
one thing is very difficult.
que hacer de este comentario,
Make
abogar por este comentario, velar por este comentario,
do advocacy on this comment and mobilize and disseminate the word and disseminate the information.
seguir adelante movilizándolo con los
Keep
gobiernos locales.
going and mobilize it and disseminate it across governments and also children.
Thank you so much, Francisco. That's so important. We're hearing some reactions from Katarina. So Katarina, same question. What is the one thing that you will do now to really apply this, to make this real? We heard your frustrations about false promises, and we heard about all of your inspiring activism. What is the one thing that you're going to do now?
Well, I actually say two things. One would be advocacy, working directly with government officials, working with the local government, and hopefully also being able to reach the national government, but also working within my community, with my family, with my friends, in my school community, because small actions also count. Because if we put together all the small actions, then you'll see the amount of actions we actually have and the huge impact we can have. Thank you.
That is so important. I love it. Small actions count and can make a big impact. So I would like to ask the same question to Fa. Fa, what is one thing that you will do now as you leave this meeting to make General Comment real for children?
Sure. I will implement GC 26 to educate the children and the youth by starting from myself and my team member. As I'm one of the youth activists, I will go to the targeted group, like the youth who can spread the GC26 information in each school, in different community at the local level. To save the environment, make them feel protective to the trees, to the river, that kind of thing. So beginning from myself. Yes.
Wonderful. I love the emphasis on schools. It's so important. Think, how can we get this into curricula? How can we get this, even for young children, using games, as Karen said. So Karen, maybe to you, what will you be doing now? One thing as you leave this, what will you be doing this week to act on General Comment 26 and to make it real for you and children in Kenya?
I think that I'm going to share the general comment with my classmates and schoolmates to just spread awareness on climate rights, and that us children can do something to teach each other on whatever is going on around the climate. And also how the climate can affect our lives and how we are the future generation, and if we don't act now, we'll have a messed up planet to deal with. Maybe it will be beyond, by the time that we are the leading generation, we will be the planet will be messed up, corrupt, beyond repair. So I'll just try and spread awareness with my school. I'll tell my class, I'll tell my classmates, I'll tell everyone that I know about whatever we have talked about here and how we can help fix climate.
Amazing, Karen. I would love to hear the same. I would love to hear from Anna. Anna, what will you be doing now in Venezuela to support the implementation of GC 26?
Okay, right now in Venezuela, what I would start doing would be imparting workshops on how climate change affects the rights of children in my country. And that's what I've been doing from some time now. Shout out to Katarina that helped me grab the forces and the confidence to do so. And after that I started doing these workshops and imparting small conferences to children, to people at my supporting organization, at the school that I graduated from. And it's a small work of informing all these people about these topics. And also I've been informing myself with experts on how climate change and climate crisis affects my country and all the little things to it. So it's a work of informing myself to inform others, to educate others, other children, to use their rights, and also, most importantly, to advocate for them, to advocate for Venezuelan children in events like this one, and also to advocate to Venezuelan children on ministries, on like public spaces and spaces of participation here in my country to make our voices heard. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes we face really, really big challenges, especially in a country like mine with such a complicated human rights situation. But nevertheless, I will not stop. I will not stop trying. And I know that now I have the support of many people like me, that like you, that in different situations, in different countries and instances, also fight for the rights of children and the rights of children to live a happy and safe and healthy life.
Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you for that reflection on, again, some of the challenges that children face, particularly in different countries. There's a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to do this work, and it takes a lot of togetherness. It takes community. So I would also like to ask the question to Dhruv, and very briefly, Dhruv, what is your next step to take this forward? And then to our special guest, live streaming from Geneva, Valerie.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. So I have two things. Sorry. The first thing would be obviously doing the thing that I'm best at, writing. I've been doing this ever since I was born. Using the information from the General Comment 26 and converting that into compelling stories and translating the complex ideas such as right to education, right to indigenous language, culture, changing that into a story or a poem that is easily understood by children. That is one of my next steps. And the second one would be, and this I just got the idea during this meeting, hearing Catherine and all the other advocates, was that finding the middle ground. Oftentimes we see ourselves in opposition to governments, but sometimes it's also about finding the middle ground. And I think one of the ways that we can do this is by thinking about the co-benefits of some of the suggestions that have been given to countries. For example, the right to education, right, including climate education and including education about risk management in curriculums, can have a great impact in a future and long-lasting impact even for the country. Because if children are healthy, if they are able to participate, then they are going to participate even in the economy. So thinking about these co-benefits and putting that into paper and using that as a tool to advocate, I believe that would be a great next step for me.
I love the idea. Like, there's so many more ideas to come by coming together. Just this conversation. I love that you already have a new idea, Dhruv, just by being here today. And Valerie, what about you? What are you going to do? What is the next steps in your plans?
Well, yes, I mean, there is quite a lot ahead of us, but I think because it's a very important first step, but of course we want this to translate into action. This is what we really want. So for that, I think the task force, the fact that will be really looking into this issue, in particular, the fact that it's multi-annual, that we are engaging for the fight on the long run. So this is now going to start. And of course, the general comment will be very much central to this advocacy strategy and to the work. We are exploring, I'm not promising anything, but I know that we're already exploring maybe how we could make the child advisory team become more of a permanent body that could follow the general comment implementation. So this is not yet, this is just something we have been trying, we're exploring, I would say, right now. So that could be possibly something that happens after this first step. And I want to say that, yes, Kristen, it takes courage, I would say, to continue this fight. I think it also requires perseverance. I want to say, I think maybe one of the messages I want to send, because I see so much enthusiasm, passion from all of you and goodwill. And I want to really say that first of all, we need to join our forces together. We are ready to support you in the fight. And I think we should not give up at all, despite maybe sometimes very challenging context and step backs, because this is the only way forward. We have to keep hoping, we have to keep fighting, and we can do this in a more impactful way if we do it together. So that would be my last word.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And yeah, I can't think of a better way to have ended this panel by then all of your recommendations together and the unity and the complementarity that all of our panelists have expressed, bringing in all of their unique perspectives from across the world. So may I ask everyone to thank our panelists. I would like to thank them. Thank you for a dynamic discussion. We loved hearing from you. We will now, unfortunately, the translation will now be stopping, but we are not finished yet. We hope that you will all stay with us for another 15 minutes, because we have a very special guest who's joining us live from Geneva. And hopefully maybe some others with him. So just for the last 10 minutes of our discussion today, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to Pratit. So Pratit, I can see you on the screen. I'm going to also add you. And then I also wanted to thank our translators. Thank you very much to Nikki and Lourdes for translating into Thai and Spanish and making this event accessible to children in those countries. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Pratit, who is our a COVID under 19 peer mentor. And Pratit is child rights activist from India, who's been involved with COVID under 19 and has been advocating for intergenerational partnerships between children and adults and for community awareness about children's rights for many years. So Pratit, who's in Geneva, is going to tell us a little bit about his views. We have Priyashi and Januka, who will also be asking you some questions. But maybe before we hear from Priyashi and Januka about their questions, just tell us, how does it feel to be in Geneva today, Pratit?
It's been a great day. In fact, the celebrations are still continuing since the morning. It all began around 11 a.m. when the Palais des Nations, the members of the CRC met to have a preliminary discussion on the launch. We also had children from around the world joining from different parts of the world. And in fact, right now, I am at the last part of this celebration where a tree is being planted to mark this day of the launch of the General Commentary 26. And I will just be turning my camera to see if you can see the gathering. We have the mayor, we have several members of the CRC, including Professor Philippe Jaffé, and others who are there to commemorate the day by planting a tree. And since the morning, the message has been one that this is a big step towards fulfilling children's rights with respect to climate change. And perhaps I would say also a high time to recognize that we need to act, and we need to act urgently. So we've seen a lot of observations over the day. Several new steps have been taken from the CRC side, a call for civil society to be involved, a strict call for governments to take action, and also an accountability mechanisms wherein children can open up about their complaints to governments and committees like the CRC. So it's been a great day, a marvelous step towards the cause of children's rights with respect to climate change. And yeah, I feel marvelous.
Thank you, Pratit. Thank you. I feel almost like I'm there. Priyashi, Januka, over to you both.
Thank you, Kristen. Pratit, it's so nice to hear how exciting it is to be in Geneva, where you've witnessed the launch of the General Comment 26. But what has been your highlight from the event today?
There have been just so many highlights because this event is so special. But one of the main highlights, I would say, is perhaps listening to the narratives of children and young people who have been affected the most by climate change, whose countries have been affected the most by climate change, and how their livelihoods have been affected. Hearing from these children in the halls of the United Nations, beyond the general bureaucracy that we know the UN for, is something very remarkable. Because today at the UN, when I heard that children from around the world could be a part of regular sessions and could narrate their experiences and tell us what's been actually happening with marginalized communities in their country, that was a shaking moment. And that was perhaps also a moment of realization. And I feel that was perhaps, I think for me, it was definitely the highlight of the day.
Thank you so much. Januka, please go ahead.
Thank you, Priyasi. Thank you so much, Pratik. It's so exciting, so exciting to hear from you and seeing you in the plantation program right now and hearing your highlights from the event. We are really very happy, like from the COVID under 19 team and from all of us, like you are representing the voices of children and young people in such a huge milestone moment. And we are really very proud of you. And it sounds like you are a journalist of COVID under 19 today. So my question to you is, after this event in Geneva, what will you be doing to continue to support the dissemination of GC26 to other children and young people across the globe?
We seem to have lost Pratik. Oh.
I'm sure with Professor Pillai would actually be more apt in answering the question on what we have here. The question we have is that what beyond the launch of the general commentary, how do we see the launch of the general comment beyond the rulings of the UN, and what's next?
Okay, can you hear me well? Can you just make a sign? Great. So wonderful to see you. The objective is, the strategy is, first of all, to disseminate to all states. And what we're going to do is we're going to make contact with all the UN states and make sure that they read the general comment and answer us on how they're going to implement its recommendations. Then we're also going to have a strategy meeting with various stakeholders. I'm not sure exactly which ones are going to take part, on how we can make sure that stakeholders have backing, support from international institutions to carry out actions and programs in various states. But what our main job is going to be is to, how should I say it, keep states on their toes when they come for their constructive dialogue with the committee. So this has a bit of a negative side in the sense that we only review 25 countries per year. And so it would take us 5-6 years before we meet all the committee, the countries that ratify the convention. But there are other fora as well. There's UPR. There are other treaty bodies where it can be brought up. And I was just speaking to the ambassador of Slovenia. She thinks that it can be brought up in other regions. So one more point, if I may, very quickly. We're very much counting on regional initiatives. I'm requested to participate in an event in Asia. Africa is so mobilized, African children and African civil society. In fact, they're having 2 competing tree planting ceremonies today in Nairobi and New York. So we just need to keep the momentum going on all parts. How's that?
Thank you so much, Professor Jeff.
Bye-bye. See you later. Ciao, ciao. Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much.
So
you just heard from Professor Jaffe what lies ahead, and I feel there's a lot of prospect from this commentary to grow up into what we see children's rights and climate change materializing through member states, through region, as Professor Jaffe said, and through the wider institutions of the United Nations themselves.
Thank you so much, Pratik, for connecting Philip Jaffe with his thoughts and insights during our event today. And thank you also for sharing your thoughts and insights and also taking us to the event. We feel that we are there in the event, witnessing with our eyes. So thank you for being our voices of children and young people. We are really very happy and proud of you, and we will grow together with this milestone. So thank you, everyone. So yeah, this is the question we have. Now we are like at the end of our event, and we will have now 5 minutes. We will take 5 minutes of yours before we end the event. So thank you everyone for being part of this event. And now I would like to pass it to Kristen, if you have anything, otherwise over to our master of ceremony.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Pratit, for joining and for being so patient and for joining in Geneva. There's lots of budding journalists in the room, even though Karen is probably the official journalist from Toto News and our youngest panelist. I think, Karen, there's a lot of budding journalism in the room. So, and in the Zoom room and in Geneva and around the world. So yes, I just would like to, as a final piece, invite all of our panelists, if any, panelists who've already answered this question, all of our audience, to share with us what would you like to do next. This is a request for you to tell us how will you be sharing information about General Comment 26 in your communities, with your schools. You heard many different ideas now. So there's a Jamboard here in your own time. You can go into that Jamboard. You could leave us a note. You can tell us your name, your age. Please just tell us your first name, your age, where you're from, and what you are going to be doing now. We want to hear from you, and we want to really understand that we are still stronger together, and that there's many actions across the world that's going to, take us further in achieving these ambitions and achieving this vision. We heard from Philippe Jaffé that the committee will be working with states. We heard from many of you that you will be informing your peers and leading your community. There's a lot of hope today. And with that, I'd like to hand over to our MCs who will close the session today. Over to you, Amrit and Radoshi.
Thank you so much, Kristen. So yeah, the discussion today was really great. Each of the speakers had valuable insights to put forward. And personally, I enjoyed and learned a lot today. I would like to ask this question to Radoshi, that how do you feel about the event, Radoshi? And as a child advising COVID-19 and as a child, what would you be doing to support children's environmental right? Over to you, Radoshi.
I must say I'm really amazed by all of our panelists' energy and passion on it. And of course, it was a very unique one since it was led by children, and I'm hoping that it was very inspirational for all, and children especially. Now, answering to your question, I have to be based on spreading awareness about climate change and how to maintain a safe and healthy environment for all, which will be starting from my college to the government in my country. I also plan to spread awareness against smoking since it is really harmful for both our health and environment. Lastly, I suggest and request everyone to come forward and work together from your own place and bring a change to tackle climate change and make our environment a safe, healthy for all. And once again, utmost thanks to all our panelists, partners, and audience for your patience and enthusiasm till the very end of this event. Over to Amrit.
Thank you so much, Radoshi. That was really wonderful. And yes, once again, thank you to all our well-wishers and supporting hands. To know more about us and our activities, do follow us on our social media handles. We have our Facebook page, Instagram account, Twitter account, and YouTube channel with the name #COVID-19. Recording of today's event can be found on social media handles of Toto News and #COVID-19. For additional information on General Comment and other child rights-based activities, do follow General Comment 26 Child Advisory Team, Terrorist Home International Federation, COVID-19, Child Rights Connect, CRC Asia, Office of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, and Children's Environmental Rights Initiative social media handles. With this, a very closing remarks from my side would be, with the urge to uphold children's right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, I'd like to depart with the hope of seeing you all again. Bye-bye. Namaste. Over to you, Ritoshi.
General Comment 26 is not just a treaty, but also a resemblance to children's rights in various perspectives. And it has opened a new door for possibility for us, adults, the rich ones, and every nation should prioritize children's rights and environment and thus work accordingly and simultaneously with children to save our planet and the next generations. Likewise, we have reached the end of the event right now, and we are hoping to see all this enthusiasm and determination when we are in the field, working together to bring a change. May peace be upon everyone.